In this section, we're carrying on with the Leadersights Framework. This is part 3. So far, we've covered dynamic stability and we've covered satisfaction. Now let's talk about just-in-time and Jidoka. The just-in-time and Jidoka pillars represent the operations of any system. This is how we satisfy the customer. These are the tools, the structures, the principles, the practices, the methods, the systems that deliver products and services to customers. On the just-in-time pillar, we like to consider it the go pillar, right? Everything about just-in-time enables the system to go faster. So we start with talking about flow. Now we're going to have great discussions about flow a little bit later, but flow is created by doing certain things. And those 4 things that you see on the slide, one place, one piece, one pace, one source, is the abbreviated way to explain how to create flow. But we can't just have flow unregulated. Flow needs to respond to a signal from the customer, whether it's the next process or whether it's the actual end customer. We want them pulling the product or service all the way through the organization rather than having us start at the back and push and push and push things out into the market and hope somebody will actually buy it. That drives us to do crazy things like spend tons and tons of money on marketing and sales. So we want customers to pull through our system, and we'll show you about creating those kinds of structures through this program. We also need to recognize that we're not in this by ourselves. We have partners throughout our supply chain that we need to get involved with us to make sure that our just-in-time system is going to work. Now, you know that just-in-time system is fragile, and anytime there's a significant disruption in the supply chain, it's going to have an impact on this. But what we're trying to do is reduce the excess costs of stuff in the system and reduce the delays caused by stuff in the system. And I'll refer you guys to Little's law about the more stuff that's in a system, the longer it takes something to get all the way through that system. If we can reduce the amount of stuff in that system, we can increase the velocity of the system, and that's from end to end in the supply chain. Yes, it's fragile, like I said, and yes, we're going to have some strategic buffers in place. Yes, we're going to have some strategic safety stock, but the intent is to make sure we're monitoring everything that goes on that requires those buffer stocks and safety stocks and try to solve those problems in advance. So we want to solve the problems before they happen by really looking and analyzing this system. So this is typically the visible stuff you can see. I can go into a facility and I can see how materials flow through the system, or I can look in the computer and I can see how information and workflows are designed in that system. So all of the lean tools and techniques are going to fit within just-in-time somewhere. The lean flow ideals are those 4 things that I've already mentioned. We're going to hit those pretty heavy in a few more modules. Probably module 9 we're really going to get it and really get to work with it and understand it. Next is the Jidoka pillar. Jidoka is a Japanese word, and I want you to know that I strategically use Japanese words whenever I'm talking about lean and operational excellence. I only keep the Japanese term when it doesn't have a good clean translation into English. So you'll see Jidoka, you'll see Kaizen, you'll see Kanban, and you'll see several others as we go through this. What does Jidoka really translate to? I don't know. The word was kind of coined in Japan to describe what happened in the oil crisis in 1973 when Toyota demonstrated the supremacy of the human over the equipment and the importance of people over the machinery. So some people define Jidoka as automation, but with a human touch. In other words, we automate processes to help human work rather than to replace human work. If the job is so dull and dim and unstructured that you can automate the whole thing, then automate the whole thing and use that person with that creative brain someplace else more strategic, more important for the organization. Others refer to the quality aspects that Jidoka really brings to the table. Things like stop and fix. You'll see that as a label on this pillar in a lot of lean houses. That means it's a philosophy of quality that you do not let a defect pass. You stop, find out what caused that defect, fix that cause, and then start the system back up. That's our philosophy of perfect quality. Others might call it built-in quality. So we don't need inspectors at the end because every operator who does any work on any part of the product or any part of the report or any part of that service delivery, we're all building that quality in step by step by step, so we don't have to inspect at the end. We also want to be able to see when there's a problem. We want to see the current status, so we build in these visual controls. And a lot of times we're going to be asking you specifically as a designer of work and as a leader in a system to not just say, hey, make sure you check this, but put some kind of physical barrier into that work system that actually prevents that person from passing it on without making sure that it's perfect. So that visual control is built into the system. We also want to pay attention to focusing on the work rather than on the worker. It's really easy for us to say, oh, that's Billy Bob's fault, or that's just human error. Human error never is just a sufficient description of what actually happened. So we've got to be very specific, and we've got to focus on the work itself and the process surrounding that work rather than on the worker. Typically when there's a mistake, it's because we failed to design the system in a way that supports that worker. It's our fault as leaders. And that follows right in with error-proofing devices. Wherever we can, we want those operators to help them by designing and installing systems that prevent us from making those mistakes. And if we can design out those errors, then that's one piece of it. But if we can put some kind of fixture in the process itself, some kind of automatic spell check, grammar check, things like that, those are all error-proofing devices. Now we can go a little crazy with this. I've seen client companies who have put so many of these in that the operator really didn't have to think. And so if you don't really have to think, you don't really think about making the work better. So if it's something that doesn't require any thinking, automate it, put the thinking person on something else. So we have some subordinate systems for this one as well. This includes the lean work system, the Jidoka management system, and the value stream management system. And I'll just give you like a 30,000 foot flyover on this, but we'll get into much more detail on these when we get into the countermeasures section of the course. When we talk about a lean work system, it's an integrated system of practices that enables the rapid advancement of production technology through an intellectual and engaged workforce. So it really hinges on recognizing that everybody in the work system is a knowledge worker. Nobody is second rate. They're all knowledge workers. They all bring their brains to work, and we want to tap into that brain power because we as leaders can't be everywhere we need to be. We don't have the skill to know everything that we need to know. And so we have to rely on the people who are doing the work to contribute to this system. One way that we build those knowledge worker skills is with evolutionary standardized work. This is just standardized work, but we're going to continue to evolve that standardized work every time we find a better way to do the process. There's a specific methodology we're going to require people to go through before they make changes to the standardized work. So it's not everybody can make any change anytime they want. That's not exactly the case. We want that input from everybody, but there's a deliberate and rigorous structure that they have to go through before they can make those changes. That's what makes it truly evolutionary. We want to drive their ability beyond skill. Typically, when we think of a high-skilled worker, we think they're diligent and they're vigilant. They've got good judgment. They've got great dexterity. And that's fine. We love all that. But if the process requires the operator to make all those decisions and to exercise that good judgment and to exercise that fine dexterity, then we've done a kind of crappy job at designing that work. So a good process should deliver all that stuff so we don't burn up so much cognitive energy of the worker that they can't be thinking about how to make this process better. That's what I'm talking about. When we want to go beyond skill, we need to go into the brains. We want to focus on learning by doing. So we talk about lots of concepts, but just like in every course that I'm going to do, there's going to be a doing component. So we're going to learn a little bit, then we're going to try it. And we're going to learn from what we tried. Then we're going to go back to the drawing board if we need to, or we're going to tweak here. We're going to enhance this concept a little bit more and go again and go again. We want people to be experimenting consistently and learning by doing new things. We also want to organize into teams. I mentioned earlier that teams are the most important structure in the learning organization. So let's put people in teams and let's cultivate those teams so that they behave like teams and satisfy that need for identity that we all have and satisfy that need for learning together that we all have. Part of that learning together is on cross-training everybody on the team for all of the team's jobs. This gives us tremendous flexibility, and it also benefits the employee because they don't have to do the same damn thing all the time. We need to add a little variety to make their job a little more satisfying. Now, you'll be in places where you recommend this strategy and some people will push back because they found what they like to do and what they're really good at doing. And the temptation by every leader is to just leave that person in there to do it. But hey, if that person wins the lottery and decides not to come back to work, what are you going to do if nobody else can do that work? So we are obligated by the needs of the business, the needs of the organization, to cross-train people so that we have more than one person capable of doing every job in the system. We focus on method over process in the lean work system. The distinction is we're going to look at this in this class as the process is the technology that actually produces the result. The simplest example is I need a hole in a piece of steel. Now, what are the processes available to us to create that hole? Well, we can drill it, or we can punch it, or we can burn it, or we can put it through a water jet. All of those are the different processes. So if you're working in an organization, you decide you're going to use a drill press to put the hole in the steel. I want the workers not thinking about how can we redo the drilling process. That's been around for a couple thousand years. I don't want the worker to say, ooh, if I only had a water jet instead of this drill press, this would be so much better. I want the operator to be thinking about the method for bringing that piece of material to that drill press and reducing the amount of time it takes that drill press to travel to actually start drilling that hole and to remove that from the process as well. So we don't want to focus on the drill itself, but on the million things that are surrounding that so that we can get better flow all the way through that. We also have this focus principle that says we really want to isolate our attention on one thing at a time. And if we can build a workstation that allows us to focus on that one piece of this, even if it's a shared resource, we want to focus on one piece at a time, but then make the changeovers extremely simple and extremely quick just by moving a couple of fixtures. Lots of things that we can think about on the focus principle. And finally, we want embedded support roles for everybody on the team. That means your job isn't just to come in and turn wrenches, or it isn't to come in and just type stuff into the word processor or run spreadsheets. Your job on the team might be the team lead for the week. You're going to run the huddle for the week. Maybe somebody else is responsible for quality for that week. So you get with the rest of the team members and see where they're struggling with quality or what kind of quality results we're getting, and keep track of that for the team. Somebody else might have safety, somebody might have productivity. All of these different support roles need to be embedded in the team, and we need to rotate people through those roles so everybody learns more and becomes a more valuable employee. These are the things that we call the lean work system. The value stream management system, we're going to organize work into product families. We're going to align all the processes that deliver those products and services to customers so that there are no delays, no black flows, no defects, no problems. And then manage those resources according to those value streams, dedicating throughout the business whatever assets that value stream needs to be successful. Much more on value streams coming up. And finally, Jidoka management. Here we're talking about creating a culture that systematically finds root causes of problems, implements short and long-term countermeasures. The short term to remove the stress immediately, the long term so it never happens again. Lots more on problem solving as well. Next part of this is putting the cap on the lean house and talking about continuous improvement for that. So stay tuned.